Hey, we have a great topic to talk about today. The title of this topic is What Happens Here, ... I know you're probably thinking of Las Vegas when you hear that. I know in talking to a couple people, the movie The Hangover immediately came up, and that comment of what happens here, and you all know the rest, stays here. But we're going to talk about this in a little different way. And to start off today, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever done something that was inappropriate for the situation that you're in? And think of it this way. Were you ever in a place where you were supposed to act a certain way and you did something inappropriate? I know in talking to some people, they talked about stories of farting in church and doing really crazy things. But have you ever done something inappropriate in a place where it wasn't appropriate to do? When I think about inappropriate people, I've been really excited and interested to watch a new show on the History Channel called Pawn Stars. It's all about a family of guys that run a pawn shop in Las Vegas. And one of the guys that works on the staff there, he's actually not part of the family, but he's actually a friend. His name is Chum Lee. And this guy is like the epitome of doing inappropriate things at inappropriate times. He always seems to say the stupidest, dumbest things to people, and they just like at the wrong time. I know the episode I was watching the other night, he was talking to a guy that was selling Pez dispensers, and he asked the guy, do these things still have candy in them? And the guy kind of looked at him like, you're an idiot, you know? Have you ever had an experience like that where you said something or did something where the person was like, you're an idiot, what are you doing? Why are you saying that? Like, that's so inappropriate and not placed. We do it all the time. We do it all the time. And what I want to think about is, in those places, what places in your lives are there appropriate behaviors? What places in your lives do you have to act or be a certain way? As I was thinking about it, I was thinking about some of these. You know, what about your school? What do you have to act like there? What's your behavior like there? Is it different than maybe what's it like at home or in your neighborhood or around your family? What about at church? Is there appropriate behavior for you at your church? Appropriate way maybe to dress. I know there's certain churches where they don't let you laugh, or you have to act a certain way, or you have to sit a certain way, or maybe that's the case for you. What about where you work? Is there an appropriate behavior, appropriate dress? Do you have to wear a uniform at work? And then what about online? What about Facebook? What about in chat rooms? What about when you text people? Is there a kind of an appropriate behavior? Is there a certain way you act there? And what I would begin to believe and would begin to think is that in many ways in your life, you begin to say what happens, and fill in the blank, at school often stays at school. The way I act at school, the way I talk at school, the way I am at school stays at school. Same thing for my neighborhood or my family. Same thing for at church or Facebook. I know online people create different identities. I know here in Missouri we had a court case about a year and a half ago about a girl who killed herself because some bunch of kids made different identities and pretended to be different people and distressed her and ended up causing her to kill herself. People do crazy things and act certain ways on internet and online and on Facebook rather than they do in real life. And so the question is this: are you a person that lives in such a way that what happens in a certain place stays in a certain place? What happens in your relationships? They stay in your relationships. What happens in your relationship with Christ? Does it stay in your relationship with Christ? What I want to look at today, and for those of you that are going to be going through the small group study, you're going to study this a little deeper, is look at John chapter 8, verses 1 through 11. If you have a Bible, go ahead and grab that and open up to John chapter 8, verses 1 through 11. This is an amazing story. You know, if you don't have a Bible, or if it's not with you right now, or whatever, you know, John chapter 8 and John chapter 9 are some of the greatest interactions and encounters that Jesus had with people. And in this situation, he encounters a woman. Not just any woman. This is a woman that is in deep trouble. She's been caught, you know, messing around, having sex, and committing adultery with men. And in fact, she's used as a pawn in many ways, in a trap to try to get Jesus to make a mistake. The Pharisees, the people that were kind of against, these are kind of like the church people that got really annoyed with people and made up all these rules, and they trying to catch Jesus in a trap. So they bring her to him and they say, Jesus, the law says that this woman should be stoned. You see, the rule was if you were caught in adultery, you were killed by stoning. And stoning was not a cool way to die. I mean, think about it. They'd start off with little stones, tiny stones, just start hurting you, and then more stones. And imagine this girl, what she's waiting for is that giant stone to finally come and bash her over the head and kill her. Not a cool way to go. But that was the law, and that was the rule of the day, was that if you committed adultery, you got caught committing adultery, you were to be stoned. So they asked Jesus, Jesus, this woman, she's been caught in adultery. What should we do? See, the trap was this. They knew two things. They knew that Jesus had to follow the law because he believed in God. He said he was a teacher of the law. At the same time, if he said to kill this woman, he would lose so many followers because he would not be showing compassion and mercy like he always preached and talked about. So they're like, we got him. So what happens? They bring the woman to Jesus, and she's sitting there, and Jesus, all of a sudden, they ask him this question, and he kneels down, and he starts writing in the ground. He just kind of reaches over and starts doodling in the dirt. And as you think about that, so many people have tried to say, oh, this is what he wrote, or this is what he was doing, or he was getting relational, or I don't know what he was doing there. But they ask him, they keep pestering him, Jesus, what should we do? What should we do? So he stands up and he says to them, he says this, and it's in verse, in verse 7 and 8. He says, let anyone who is without sin be the first to throw the stone at her. And then he stoops down and he rolls to the ground. And after he said that, these guys just started to walk away. And they left her alone. And I don't want to focus too much on that moment. I want to focus on the moment after that. Jesus and this woman are left alone. And Jesus stands up from drawing on the ground next to this woman. And he says, woman, where are they? Where are the ones that condemned you? And she says, they're not here. No one's around, sir. And then Jesus says this to her. And this is amazing. He says, and then neither do I condemn you. That's the first part of it. Jesus gives grace. Jesus gives mercy. He forgives this woman. He does not condemn her. That's a great moment. That's a pinnacle of a moment. That's a relationship with Jesus. But then he says one more thing to her. He says, go now and leave your life of sin. You see, this is what I want to contend happens so often. We get in the mentality that what happens here stays here. And by that I mean what happens in your church, what happens in your small group, what happens in your relationship with Jesus stays there. And we never talk about it, we never do anything about it, we never share it. But Jesus said this, and this happened over and over again. Go through and look at all the encounters that Jesus had with people. And the majority of them, he said, go and do something. He healed a blind man in John chapter 9. He told him to go and tell what had happened and go present himself. He shared it with a woman at the well in John chapter 4. And she was so inspired that she went and told others about it. She said, this guy knew everything about me. When you have an encounter with our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, the next step is to go. What happens in your relationship with Jesus cannot stay in you. It needs to go out. It needs to be spread. It needs to be shared. You need to live it out. You can't just suck it inside because then it'll just die. You need to give, to serve, to go, to listen, to build relationships, to let God use your relationships, to let God use you. So here's the thing. So often we always think of student ministries in church as just coming in, consuming. I want to be part of the group, I want to be part of the group. And great things happen there. But if that's all that it's about, well then we're failing. You see, we need to go out. We need to live our lives in communities. We need to look at our passions and our desires and the way that God has wired us and the things that we care about. And we need to begin thinking of how can I build relationships around that. How can I begin to think differently and act differently and go out and just focus on loving people and caring for people and including people? And yeah, we're gathering around something that's our passion. And then we start rubbing arms and shoulders with people. And this is what God has called us to do, to get out. You see, what happens here can't stay here. It can happen everywhere. And it should happen everywhere. So let's do it. Let's get out of this mentality of what happens there stays there. And let's start living our real lives of who we are. Let's stop being different people at different places. And let's start being the people that God created us. And the way that God made us. And start sharing what God is doing in our lives. Have a great time. Enjoy your small groups if you're going to get in small groups. Maybe you're just going to think about this. I pray that God would bless your time thinking, your time praying, your time discussing, and that He would inspire you to not live in the way of what happens here stays here, but to live in the way that what happens here can happen everywhere. God bless. Bye.